Hello, and welcome to the Technology webinar series of the Impact Project. My name is Marcelo Royan. I'm the technical leader here at Impact, and I will be hosting this webinar today for you. Before we start, let me introduce the scope and nature of what we're going to see in the next 30 minutes or so. This is a series of webinars that we have set up here at Impact with the goal of explaining what the FIWARE technology is and how you can take advantage of it. The FIWARE technology is one of the main benefits of our program, and it's also a requirement should you wish to participate in it. So these webinars are aimed at introducing these technologies and helping you to better understand and use them in your projects. In the first webinar, we saw together an introduction to FIWARE technology to get in touch with the technology itself and how you can use it to help you build your project. Then, in the second webinar, we walk through the different FIWARE components and modules with the goal of helping you better understand the whole ecosystem, possibilities, and resources. As we saw, resources are a very important part of the FIWARE ecosystem. Every partner involved in both the FIPPP and the FIWARE projects has put a lot of effort in the development of the technologies and the accompanying tutorials, websites, and other helpful resources. So I really want to suggest you check out all the resources that you have at your disposal when designing your application's FIWARE architecture. So now in this third Impact webinar, I'd like to give you some interesting and first-hand insights about the use of enablers and their integration in your project's architecture. What we're going to do is see how enablers differ from each other, not just in their area and functionality, but also in their coverage, their maturity, their scope. So we will go into some detail with some of the most used enablers from every area, so that you can get a better idea about how you can structure your FIWARE-based application. Of course, this webinar will be followed by others which will keep up to date the concepts that we're going to talk about now. This is the structure of the information I wish to present you with today. It follows what I just introduced you just now. So first, a little introduction. Then we'll see the FIWARE Insights. We'll go into some details about the FIWARE generic enablers. Not all of them, of course, because there are so many, but we will focus on the most used and the most generic ones. The ones that, let's say, you're going to be more likely to be using in your project. At the end of our session today, we'll finish with a review of everything and with some clear next steps for you to follow if you're interested in having your project backed by Impact. Let's start then, if you're ready. It's very important, and I really suggest you to review the first two webinars that we published, because they're going to be a good introduction for you to the FIWARE technology. In case you haven't seen them yet, I really encourage you to go ahead now, to stop this one and go ahead and check out these two webinars first. In the first one, we introduced FIWARE technology and its architecture to help you understand all the ecosystem. The second one, we walk through the different FIWARE components, the modules, all the resources that are available for you. And after these two ones, I hope you have a good view of FIWARE, of the FIWARE ecosystem. And so, this third webinar, as I was saying, now that you know what FIWARE is, what technology it includes, and the features that it's about, what we're going to do is examine the enablers implementation process a little closer to give you a real life view of what you're going to find in FIWARE and how you need to approach your development. Not all enablers are the same in terms of maturity, stability, and use cases. Here at Impact, we've been working with the enablers and with FIWARE technology for quite some time now. And so we have I would say we have an interesting view on the technology and on the enablers. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you our point of view, Impact's point of view, on which ones to focus on first and how to implement them. This is something that we like to call the insights because this is uh, where we think we add some value to you in introducing like the insider information about the enablers. We also will take a look a bit deeper at the details of some of the most generic and widely used enablers. So some of the enablers that you're probably gonna be using because either they are really very generic or they cover some features that are pretty familiar to web applications, especially related to mobile, which, as you know, is our specialty here at Impact. So we'll take a look at Horizon Context Broker, for example, Corrento Streaming, Cosmos Big Data Analyzer. Well, we'll take a look at some of them so that you can have a more familiar look at them. Let's go see these insights. FIWARE is, as you already know, an infrastructure aimed at the creation and deployment of internet services and applications. It has two sides, a hardware and a software side. So you get two platforms with FIWARE, and as you know, also FIWARE goal, is to become an open alternative for developers, for web developers. So the hardware side is based on an OpenStack cloud computing infrastructure, which is called FIWARE Lab. I already introduced this on the first webinars, but I really want to stress out the architecture. On the software side, FIWARE is a collection of generic enablers, which act as building blocks organized in 6 different categories according to the functionality. We will get into detail in a minute. Although in this webinar, we're going to be focusing on the software side, so on the use of the generic enablers in your application, I wanted to start explaining a little bit about FIWARE Lab and about the enablers deployment in case you don't use it. So FIWARE Lab, as I was saying, is an OpenStack-based working instance of FIWARE. And it's accessible online, of course. You have free accounts for testing. And what you can do in FIWARE Lab is test the FIWARE generic enablers and of course your developments. So as I was saying, it's a cloud-based service, and it has the usual structure, methods, features, and terminology that all cloud hosting services offer. The only thing that you need to take into account, and it's quite an important thing, is that for now, for the time being, it's only a sandbox. So it's not ready for production. This is quite an important point. So as of today, March 2015, FIWARE Lab is not production ready. A production ready instance is planned to be deployed, and as soon as it is, we'll let you know. But for now, bear in mind that you can only use it for development and quality assurance. So you have pretty much two options when you need to deploy your enablers, the generic enablers that make part of your architecture. First option is, of course, to deploy them in FIWARE Lab, in the instances that you can create in FIWARE Lab, and you use blueprints to do so. Blueprint is a sort of an image of the generic enabler. It's pre-packaged and it's ready to be installed, just as you usually do in any cloud computing environment. Second option is you can deploy the enablers in your own infrastructure. For this, you can use RPM or any repository available in your operating system. Of course, as long as you're running one of the supported environments, all based in Linux. As you guess, FIWARE is an open source project, and so no Windows, no iOS, just Linux. And in fact, the reference installation environment is a CentOS 6.3 Linux distribution. You can install all the generic enablers that you need for your architecture, for your application, using directly the RPM method. And well, as you usually do, all the dependencies can also be installed automatically through RPM. I mean, the stack, everything. So I mean, if you are familiar with RPM systems, it's gonna work like this. By the way, I would add that there's a project right now to make Docker versions of the enablers, and hopefully we'll get that very soon. But for now, they're not ready. So the two options you have right now is option one: use the FIWARE lab and deploy the generic enablers there using the blueprints. And second option, use your own environment and deploy using RPM. Pretty easy, isn't it? There are many generic enablers, and they're all organized in 6 technical chapters, I mean, 6 categories in the FIWARE website, according to their functionality. The categories are the following: cloud hosting, data and context management, architecture of applications, Internet of Things services enablement, interface to networks and devices, and security. You can check the catalog. The catalog should be like your main point, the central part of your FIWARE research and of your FIWARE development side, because this is where you're gonna find everything. So the catalog, see, these are all the categories: data and context management, Internet of Things. I mean, the 6 categories that we just talked about, plus the cloud hosting category. So the lab, as I was saying before, is here only for testing purposes, and you really need to be aware of several things regarding the lab when applying for a project at Impact. The use of FIWARE Lab is a minimum. You really are expected to be using it, and it's not enough to be considered a FIWARE compliant application. So you can't just say like, okay, I'm gonna use the FIWARE Lab, I'm gonna use the cloud computing or storage, and that's it. This is it. I'm gonna be FIWARE compliant. No, that's not possible. It's only a minimum. Also, another important thing to bear in mind is that as of today, there's no commercial version of the cloud computing platform on which the lab is based. So only development and quality assurance. In any case, as I was saying, it's not going to be enough to use the lab to be considered FIWARE compliant. So even when a production ready commercial instance is offered to the market, which is something that is going to be happening soon, I think, not even in this situation, the use of the lab would be considered enough to be FIWARE compliant. One big conclusion is you should focus on the software side above all. And that's the reason why this webinar is mostly centered in the software side, so in the enablers. So let's go for the enablers. Some insights, some ideas that I really think are useful for you when you're thinking about making a FIWARE compliant or FIWARE based application. Well, I would say that extend is better than rebuild. As you may know, rebuilding an architecture can sometimes be a tough and lengthy and risky task because you need to get rid of something that is already working, something that is already tested, even sometimes something that is already in production, so live, and on which you're basing your business, something that your customers count on. So, it's kind of risky, time consuming, and long task to rebuild this architecture. And also, if you think about it, this is not going to add any value to your business. And FIWARE and Impact, we are here to help you add value to your business. So what I'm trying to say is that there's no real point in substituting something that you already have for a new development just because it's based on FIWARE. This is not the ideal way to go. What we really think is that you should think about using FIWARE to build new features for your product instead of replacing some developments that you already have. So I don't know, maybe you were having some feature planned on your roadmap, on your product roadmap, and it was planned like for 6 months from now, and you were counting on this time because you needed to develop the basics for this new feature. Well, maybe you can find some enabler that helps you streamline this development, and that would be a good situation to go. So you would use FIWARE to develop this new feature and to get it ahead in the roadmap. After all, FIWARE is an open architecture, and as such, it can be integrated with your own architecture, with the one you already have. So it's going to be much easier to integrate than to rebuild. So that's my first advice for you. Then keep in mind that as of today, FIWARE enablers are almost 100% backend oriented and not front end. So that means that you're going to find many features for your server side, for the server side of your application, and not for the front end. So keep this in mind, especially when you're working on mobile applications, because if you're working on an application which relies mostly or even exclusively on its front end, it's going to be very difficult to integrate FIWARE enablers because FIWARE enablers are mostly backend. They're oriented at the backend. So what to do then? Well, try to build a stronger backend for your application using FIWARE. Of course, something that adds value to the business. It's not a matter of building a backend just for the sake of it. But if you think it can add value, go for it. And honestly, and trust me, if you really don't have the need for a backend, or if your backend is too simple and you just aiming at the development of a front end, well, maybe FIWARE is not your technology, is not a technology for you, and therefore maybe Impact is not a project for you. Please consider it thoroughly because when you apply for Impact, we're going to look at all these things, and we want to make sure that you really will be using FIWARE and that you are gonna use it to add value to your business. Of course, all these insights that I'm giving you are based in our experience, in the experience we already have had with the startups in the acceleration process. So one of the cases we've already seen is when a company, when a project wants to develop an enabler. So let's say you're thinking about developing some technology that is not included as of today in the FIWARE ecosystem. There's no generic enabler which does something similar or even exactly what you're gonna develop by yourself, and maybe you're thinking that, hey, this technology could be an enabler. That's right. That's very good. In fact, we really like this thing. So if you have this idea, we're gonna be welcoming you. But the only thing that you need to bear in mind is that, well, not the only thing. In fact, you have to take into account two important things. First is that, well, if you build some technology aiming at being an enabler, for this, your technology will have to go through a validation process in order to be part of FIWARE. There are some requirements that you need to meet. These are published in the FIWARE site, and if you're interested or want to have more information about that, if you want to have some details, just drop us a line, and we'll be more than happy to give you a detailed description of this validation process and of the requirements, of course. Second thing you need to take into account is that, well, you want to develop an enabler, that's fine, but you still need to follow the requirements that the rest of the projects need to follow. So basically, you need to use FIWARE enablers, FIWARE technology to develop your own enabler. This is very important. You have to take this into account. You can't just begin the development of an enabler from scratch, because if it doesn't use FIWARE, it's not eligible for impact acceleration. Well, not just for impact, in fact, but this would apply to any of the accelerators in A16. Before we continue, I'd like to talk a little bit about the real world use of FIWARE technologies and FIWARE generic enablers. You know, you may be thinking that, well, yes, this FIWARE technology looks good, but is it real? I mean, is it possible to build great products, to build great technology using it? How easy is it gonna be? I mean, it's my business, so I really care about that. Okay, I want to show you some examples of companies that are built using FIWARE technologies. FIWARE is a technology developed and supported by big European companies like Telefonica, Deutsche Telekom, Orange, and as such, it's a thorough technology. It's stable and it's gonna be here for a long time. So let's take a look at a few successful projects that have used FIWARE. For example, es accesible means it's accessible in Spanish. This is an app that is use crowdsourcing information to rate the accessibility of places all around. Let's take a look. So it's based. I mean, It's aimed at the disabled, the disabled people. It's just based on it's an app where people can rate the places they visit according to their accessibility, and then it adds up all the information and then shows maps and evaluates places um, for the people that are going to go later. And so this application is built, the the app and the backend is built using FIWARE. Another example, small signals. Small signals is a development platform, so some kind of a framework for environmental control services based on Internet of Things. So they offer final services and also APIs to integrate their services into your own product. Products are also built using FIWARE. So here, I mean, this is a very hardware-based company, but all the software that is behind that controls the devices, the sensors, and everything has been using FIWARE enablers to be developed. So, for example, let's take a look at some of their products. For example, they have an aquarium controller. So this is something that you put into your aquarium, and it's connected to an app. And if the water of the aquarium goes too salty or has a problem with its pH, it's gonna send an alarm to your smartphone so that your fish don't die. You know. Well, it's an interesting company. They build their software using FIWARE, so it's a real example. What else? Smart taxi. Smart taxi is an application aimed at taxi drivers, and it helps them predict the demand. So basically, what taxi drivers do is they check the beginning of a service and then the end of it also, and all this data is collected in the application, which makes heat maps with all this data and uses big data analysis, the FIWARE enabler, to predict how the demand is going to evolve based on the data available and on past experience. So this is also built using FIWARE. Well, I would hit the play button for you to see the video because it's a really good one, but I'm afraid it's in Spanish, so you won't understand. Anyway, it's a great application. Then you have Smart Fountain, which is a service for management of public fountains, which has been deployed in Sevilla, and it's very related to Internet of Things. What I was trying to show is that FIWARE is a real technology, is something that works. So before we go into detail about some specific enablers, I mean some of these enablers, the main idea behind it is that some of the enablers are very generic and at the same time are very well tested, very stable, so that they can be used in almost any application that has a solid backend. And therefore, you have many enablers, and you have to choose from them, from this big list of enablers. We know that some of them are more stable. We know that you're going to be willing to focus on this one first. And this is what we're going to see now in the next minutes. And here it is, FIWARE generic enablers. This is the most used generic enablers. This is a list provided by FIWARE itself. You have the URL here, so it's on their website. This is a list of the most used enablers, the ones that on which you will concentrate for your developments. So you've got Orion, Cosmos, WireCloud, Corrento, EDAS, Kirok, Access Control. These are the more important. And basically, they're the same. They're almost basically the same as the ones that we at Impact recommend. At Impact, we have divided the recommended generic enablers in two categories. On one side, we have the core FIWARE enablers. These are like the real ones that are at the center of your development. This is mostly where you want to get started when you're thinking about the architecture of your application, including FIWARE. On the data and context management category, you have the context broker, Orion, big data analysis, Cosmos, and stream-oriented, Corrento. Then you have Internet of Things services enablement. And in this category, you've got one very important enabler, which is the EDAS for backend device management. And finally, as core enablers, we have WireCloud, which is an application mashup enabler. So mostly, we would say that to begin with one of these five enablers would be a good idea for you. Then you have the supporting, what we call supporting FIWARE enablers. So this is a subset of enablers that can be used along with the core enablers that we just presented, and they contribute a lot to the functionality. So in the data and context management category, you have the complex event processing. Then you have the two most important enablers in the security category, which are identity management, KeyRock, and authorization PDP of Z-Force. And then finally, you have for cloud hosting, object storage enabler, which is a development done on top of OpenStack, and the platform as a service manager, which is called Pegasus. Basically, you want to start focusing on these enablers. This is kind of a short list. This is how you should treat it. For example, Orion Context Broker is on the list. It's one of the core enablers, and it's one of the most useful. You will be using it more than probably, because a context broker is something that almost any application needs. What's context broker? Context broker is just a component that is able to mediate between consumer producers, like for example sensors, and the context consumer applications. So for example, smartphones applications that access the context information provided by the sensors. So it's kind of a structure of a database, if you wish, where you have producers and consumers of information, and the context broker is in the middle of it all. It's just standardizes the access to this information, the access for read and for write. So as you see, it's pretty generic, it's pretty common. Therefore, it's an enabler that we really recommend to start with. You have, as usual, many resources on the net that help you understand what the enabler is, how it can be used, etc., and so on. That is just an example that I wanted to show you so that you are aware of what you can do with any of these, say, shortlist enablers. So, for example, the webinar, the Horizon webinar, this is a resource that is hosted in SlideShare, and it's this webinar is done by Fermin. Fermin Galan is a FIWARE developer. He's in charge of this specific enabler, and well, you can have all this information here. You can learn how to use the enabler, what it is, how to use it. You know, you have the whole example and the whole presentation here. And let me tell you, it gets pretty technical. You see, you have code to show you how it works. Well, I really recommend. I mean, I'm showing you this example for the Horizon enabler, but it's you can find almost the same in any enabler. So what I would tell you is like begin with this short list. Try to identify what you will be more likely to be using, and then do some research, and you'll find many webinars and many resources to help you get started and to help you advance in your development. And well, yes, FIWARE is growing. I want to show you this as a way to really underline the fact that FIWARE is getting noticed and it's getting used in many real world applications. For example, in IoT, so Internet of Things, this is an area where you can find many FIWARE based developments. And for example, just a few days ago, there was this article in Programmable Web, this website, talking about some cities that have team up to implement what they call civic tech based on FIWARE. So there are many cities that have joined the initiative in many countries, 7 countries: Belgium, Brazil, Denmark, Finland, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. And this is basics for developing smart city infrastructure based on Internet of Things. And FIWARE is the basis for it all. Just wanted to show you that this is real and it's getting really powerful. All right, let's see the next steps then, because we're already at the end of this webinar. Before we go, I'd like to sum things up and to summarize what we've seen through this webinar. The most important is, for me, would be that you have your next steps clear. If you want to use FIWARE technology, if you want to apply to the impact program. So first, using the catalog and our shortlist, identify and select the generic enablers that fit your project's needs, and classify them by priority and risk. Risk in the sense of how they fit into your application, whether you have to replace things or you're gonna use them for new development, etc. Then go to FIWARE School and the other online resources like Stack Overflow, like the presentation in SlideShare. You have many resources available, and learn about these generic enablers and get deep inside them. Then set up an account at FIWARE Lab and begin testing them. It's free. Always bear in mind the following thing. As I was saying, some enablers are more generic, basic, and mature than others. Keep in mind the short list. It may be wise to use FIWARE for new developments and features instead of rebuilding things that you already built. Last but not least, it's very important to be ready to switch to FIWARE Lab your whole application when a production ready instance is launched, because this is going to happen in the near future and you need to be ready for this. Of course, we're here to help. So, as you know, you need to understand FIWARE if you want to apply to impact. What you need to do, of course, is to present a project of architecture for your development that includes FIWARE technology. You don't need to implement FIWARE technology before you apply to impact. If your project is selected, then Impact will guide you through the implementation process and we will help you do the development through specialized technical mentoring. We will help you integrate FIWARE in your architecture design. We will help you phase it if necessary. And of course, we care about your business as well as about your technology. So we will balance technology and business because for us, everything is important. FIWARE is important, your business is important. We will always be supporting you in your technical questions. So as I say, where do you go from here? Check all the information, select the generic enablers, use FIWARE School and other resources to learn, set up an account at FIWARE Lab and test, make your architecture ready, be ready to apply for impact. And of course, stay tuned for our next webinars, which will go deeper in this technology. So that was all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope to see you soon in Impact. Thank you.